Queens, I've just been having the most beautiful chat before we press record with this wonderful lady that I'm going to introduce you to now, the lovely Robyn. So I'll read Robyn's bio to you and then we'll dive straight in. So Robyn Shumer is a leadership development facilitator at Johnson & Johnson and a storyteller, helping others share their personal and business stories with impact. She says, preparing for and delivering a TEDx talk has been more impactful than all my hours of therapy. Robyn balances being a working mum, yoga teacher, executive coach, TEDx speaker, and mental health advocate. She's on the leadership team of J&J's Mental Health Diplomats and founded What's Your Story USA, which teaches storytelling and raises money for nonprofits. Her memoir, Bones, Anorexia, Anxiety, and My Path to Self-Love, is available online. So, Robyn, without further ado, welcome to the Body Love Binge podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Shall we dive in with 10 quick fun fire questions so the audience can get to know you a bit more? Okay. Number one, feel free to say your own, by the way. What's the best book you've read this year?
Bones.
Or if you didn't say that, I would be, quite disappointed.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Number two, morning person or night owl?
Morning. Oh gosh, I don't like leaving the house after 6 p.m.
Same. Honestly, this is just a Victoria observation, but the amount of women I speak to and work with that have had eating disorders or have recovered, 99% are morning people.
Mm-hmm.
Just an observation.
I like it.
Yeah, me too. Number three, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
Princess Diana. And I
Great.
write about her a lot in my book.
Oh, wow.
She was very influential in growing up in the 80s.
Yeah, wow. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Probably I Will Survive. Gloria Gaynor.
Love.
That's probably another one that 99% of people say, I will survive.
It's quite high though, quite high pitched. My voice, I don't think, doesn't go that high. I would try. I would do my best. Number five, your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
I like to read or do a crossword puzzle or paint. It's usually something solitary.
Yeah, and creative with your hands.
Yeah, my hands and my mind and creating.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I would like to be able to fly.
Yeah, that's a common one, which makes sense.
Right? What about you? What would yours be?
I would, because I live in the Netherlands, which isn't that far from England, which is I say home, I have two homes. I don't know what you call it, but where you can just like click your fingers and arrive at a destination.
Teleporting.
Because then you and I could just be doing this in person right now.
That would be amazing.
And then I could just be back in time for dinner, so to speak. So that would be really cool. But flying would be my second best, I think. Yeah. Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
One thing people might be surprised to learn about you.
I'm an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert. So I can show up and I can entertain and I can facilitate and I can speak to 2,000 people and have everybody on the edge of their seats. And I get so exhausted by it. And then I just need to go home and do my crossword puzzles, paint, or read.
And just be inwards and recharging yourself with your creativity.
Yeah, even socially. I mean, I have a lot of good friends, but I'd rather be home than out doing things.
I must say, I am an extrovert and I do love people, but I'm more and more starting to just love being in my home and my comforts and Yeah, that feels good for me. So I'm with you
Hmm.
on that.
I think
This
it's probably
isn't,
an aging thing, like a
I think so, because
maturity.
we've been there, done that, going out and yeah,
Hmm.
nice to be present and relaxed more so.
Yes.
Yeah. Number 9, what's your star sign if you're into, if you know, like, do you know what your star sign is in astrology?
I mean, I know I'm an Aquarius.
Oh, Aquarius, yeah. My mum's an Aquarius.
Oh, when's your birthday?
My mum, not me. So my
Oh,
mum,
your mom. Okay.
7th of February. And yours?
January 31st. So is your mom really creative and
Well, there's healed Aquariuses and there's unhealed Aquariuses.
gotcha?
Yeah. So some aspects, I'm not an expert in astrology, but I'm really
Yeah.
interested in it in general. She is creative, but she wouldn't allow to admit that she is because nothing's ever good enough and all the things.
Have you ever seen the birthday book?
No.
I have it downstairs, but it's this wonderful book. It's about this thick, and um what it does is you find like for you and your mom, for example, you find her birthday and yours, and then it
Mhm.
tells you what your relationship is like with somebody that was born on that day.
How interesting. That well,
It,
it was completely codependent, but not anymore.
right, right, because you did the work.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
it's very interesting. I've done it with my husband, oh, it's very, I'll send you a link to it.
Oh, please do, because I'm really interested in that. I love stuff like that, the birthday book. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and number 10, yoga on the beach or in the mountains.
Mountains.
Mountains, same. Okay, well, let's dive into the juicy part of the episode. And I would love
Okay.
to know your story, Robyn. So, why
Mhm.
did you, I guess it's such a big question, but why did you write Bones?
Okay. So there's a lot of backstory, of course.
Yes.
So I really started anorexia when I was 8 years old.
Mhm.
And had never even heard the word anorexia before. Um, and then I was in the hospital for it, which was so traumatic. And it was 1,000 years ago. And I still feel post-traumatic stress from it.
Mm.
So I was in the hospital for it for 3 months in 1987. And then in seventh grade, I started writing a book, fiction. It was called Wasting Away. and,
Wow.
and it was my story, but I was the protagonist, but it was fiction.
Yeah.
And I worked on Wasting Away for many, many, many years. I went to a special high school for writing and publishing. And in my 30s, I realized I needed to make it a memoir. And
Mm.
so I took a lot of different memoir writing classes and worked with coaches, and I converted it to memoir. And in my story, I share so many tragic things that were said and done to me, but also in a very lighthearted way. So the reviews of my book are that people laugh and cry, um, but that it's a quick read that brings the reader along my journey. And in your intro, you mentioned that I had said preparing for and delivering my TED Talk has been more impactful in my
Yeah.
overall well-being than anything I've done. And it's the God's honest truth. And in my TED Talk, I came up with my mantra, which is don't be ashamed to share the stories that shaped you.
Mm.
And I grew up in a home where what happened in the house stayed in the house.
Mm.
So there was a lot of secret keeping and a lot of posing,
Yeah.
presenting to the external world that we were one way when really we were a hot mess.
Yeah.
And I realized after my TED Talk, I've got this body of work. And being somebody that's biased towards action to begin with, I was like, I need to get this out there. And
Mm.
so that's when I started doing all of the training and really working very hard on it. And there's a lot of information in my book that is scary and upsetting, but at the end of the day, it has a happy ending.
Yeah.
And my book is a, a lot of experts in the eating disorder world loved my book, but they wouldn't put their name on it because I talk about weight, I talk about calories, and I talk about behaviors.
Mm.
And I really meditated a lot on, do I want to include that information in my book? Because some of the feedback I got was it's coming across as a how-to manual.
It depends on how you look at it, right? As with
Th-
everything.
Thank you. And so I can live with myself because I put a disclaimer.
Hmm.
But Victoria, at the end of the day, I wrote this book so that people that don't have the brain of somebody with anorexia can get into the brain of the anorexic.
Yes.
Because I'm getting so much feedback from people that they don't know what they don't know. And reading my book, being in a relationship with somebody with an eating disorder or being a caretaker, people are telling me it is illuminating.
Mhm.
And so, just to summarize, I wrote my book because I don't want people to be ashamed to share the stories that shape them. And I want to be that light for people that don't know what they don't know and be truthful and let people know that you can live a beautiful life in recovery.
Yes. And my hat goes off to you, Robyn, because I think if you were to hold yourself back and not share those things when that was very much your reality, you wouldn't be being truly authentic to yourself and your listeners. And as a
Mhm.
professional, unfortunately, there's pro ana websites. There's places where people can be told, because I was on them when I was anorexic, how to do the
Yeah.
thing. So
Exactly. We're resourceful. We're going to get the
yes.
information.
Yeah, so I think it's beautiful and raw and real that you've shared what you've shared. And I assume, obviously, when you've shared how you recovered, and I've got loads of questions about that in a moment, but I assume that you're not counting calories now and logging calories now, which obviously is freedom, right? Yes.
Yes. I mean, from being in recovery that anorexia is a full-time job,
Yeah. Yes.
right? And it's a commitment to your eating disorder before any other relationship.
Any other, even my mum, who I didn't realize it was codependent then. So I was in the codependency and I loved her so much and felt like I needed her so much. I was horrible to her because she was a threat to the eating disorder. She was trying to make me eat and I would lie. I was the most professional liar. And I'd love to go into the ins and outs of your story, but eating disorders create versions of ourselves that aren't truly who we are. And so when we lash out and when we're angry, that's not who we are. It's just intertwined with the eating disorder and trying to protect that. And it's all linked to safety and all the things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you started with the anorexia around the age of 8, you said, which is, obviously really young.
Yeah.
Did you ever discover the root reason for that? I know that it's a coping mechanism, but did you find out, was it a big thing? Was it like just your childhood in general? Like what was it that
Hmm.
started the restriction for you?
So growing up in the 80s, I was bombarded with messages about what beauty was for women.
Yeah.
And it was these supermodels. And I had an older brother. And I write in my book that, he had posters all over his bedroom
Uh,
of the supermodels. And just the messaging that I was receiving culturally was that you had to be thin to be of value. If you wanted any currency, you needed to look a certain way.
yeah.
So I think it was a combination of, societal messages and an adaptation to the home that I grew up in.
Mm.
I grew up in a home with a very, very, very controlling mother, very critical. As an adult, I realized that she is a narcissist,
Mm.
and I could never please her. And my mother was not somebody that would give you warmth and empathy. She would give you food and material things when
Yeah.
all I wanted was a hug. I didn't know at the time all I wanted was a hug.
Mm.
And so, what better way to reject her and piss her off than to refuse food,
Interesting. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, and then add to it, I do believe in the research that there is a genetic component.
I'm
Um,
totally on board with that, the migration response. Yes.
yes,
Yes, but we're
100%.
on the same page with that. That's good. Some people are like, I don't even know what that is. And I'm like, wow, more people need to know what this is.
More people do. And the work that Cindy Bulick is doing in around the world, and then, the emotional inheritance,
Mhm.
epigenetics, all of that.
Yes. Yes. It's all linked, but it's that initiation of the start of those kind of coming into play and
Right. The
manifesting.
grooming.
Yeah.
Um, when I was in fourth grade, so I must have been 9 or 10.
Mm.
My best friend had the beautiful new teacher from the Philippines, and I had the old lady that was retiring in 5 minutes. And I was so jealous that Michelle Jordan had Miss Reyes. And maybe you did this growing up too. When it was your birthday, you would like bring a treat, cupcakes or cookies or something to the classroom.
Yeah.
And then you would go to the other classrooms and pass out the extras to the teachers. And Victoria, that year, I was so excited about the prospect of bringing Miss Ray as a cupcake that I could not sleep the night before. I mean, like,
Wow.
I was crazy, like, in crush with her. And, um, I brought the cupcakes to my classroom. We sang happy birthday. I picked out like this perfect outfit. It was like a purple and gray striped top with matching skirt, and I had tights on. And I went to Miss Reyes's classroom, and I knocked on the door. A student opened it, and in I walked. And Miss Reyes said, "Oh my God, Robyn, it's your birthday." And I felt ecstatic because she knew my name. She saw me. I was like, "Oh my God, this ideal beauty of standard even knows my name." And then I carefully hand her a cupcake. And then Miss Reyes said something that really set off Operation Anorexia. She looked me up and she looked me down, and she settled her gaze at my ankles. And she said, "Robyn, you have elephant legs."
Oh my goodness me, she did not.
And I'm thinking to myself, duh, I already know that. I don't need you to tell me that. And so I went to the bathroom and I cried. I got myself together, and that really kickstarted Operation Anorexia. And it wasn't until I was a sophomore in college that I realized what she meant was that my tights were sagging at the ankles.
Oh, that's what she meant. Because I was just about to say, I do not like this teacher in this
Oops.
story.
I know, right? She's the villain.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Interesting. Isn't it
mm-hmm.
interesting though how, like we were talking about with your book, like with perception, like everything
Yes.
is, my brain went to, even now, you telling the story, it went to what yours went to as a child. Because I was told the same, but mine were, my grandma used the word tree trunk legs, and she meant it in terms of the size, not anything to do with what I was wearing. So my brain automatically is like, oh, we know what that means. It means this.
Isn't it
Cognitive
so
bias.
interesting?
So interesting. Cognitive bias, right? I think
Yes.
we call it. Yeah. And we only then see that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that kick-started your right Operation Restrict.
Yes.
And why do you think you were so obsessed with this teacher? Because she was just so beautiful and then that was on a pedestal for you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was 1984. She just represented the ideal standard of beauty. I grew up in an area that wasn't very diverse. So even to have this exotic, mocha
Mhm.
skinned woman with long hair down to her waist and she was young and
Yeah.
new, I was just enamored with her.
Yeah, so interesting. And then when that went full blown for you, did you attempt to hide it at first? Like, how quickly was it until your parents, did you live with both of your parents?
Hmm.
How long was it until they noticed something?
So the summer of 85 um, was when it really blew up. I mean, they had seen me restricting, and, my mother tried to coerce me and bribe me to eat. If you eat a half of this, I'll take you shopping.
Mm.
Um, and I did, I wore the baggy clothing but what's so weird, Victoria, which I still don't understand. I looked in the mirror and I saw fat, but then why did I hide my body because I didn't want people to see how fat it was, or did I actually know it was really thin and didn't want to get discovered?
I think that if I'm speaking from my experience, I think the latter, because I would wear the baggy clothes too, so they couldn't see how much weight I'd lost, but I still thought I hadn't lost enough.
Yes.
So I guess that might be the
Yeah.
same for you too.
Well, that summer we were at the 4th of July fireworks in America. And, families bring their picnics and there's hundreds of people. And my parents were begging me to eat. And I just finally snapped and screamed and cried and said, I can't, I can't, I can't. And I ran away somewhere. I mean, not like run away from home, but I ran away from them.
Yeah.
And that's when they took me to the doctor. But one thing I forgot to share is that um that school year I had read Stephen Levenkron's The Best Little Girl in the World.
I've not heard of that book.
Okay, so um it's a book about the protagonist, this Kessa, and she's runs at 5 miles a day and she'll only eat carrots and she ends up in the hospital. And um a couple of maybe the spring before that 4th of July episode, I got up nerve and I went to my mom and I said, I read this book about this girl that she's afraid of getting fat. She runs 5 miles a day. She chews everything 25 times, and it sounds a lot like me. And my mother just looked up at me and she said, well, I guess you need a psychiatrist then.
Wow.
But
No
did
love.
nothing, did nothing.
Mm. And all you were looking for is that love and connection and understanding and being seen and being heard.
Exactly.
I feel that love is always the answer. I'm not saying that if any parents are listening to this with children with anorexia, I'm not saying that they don't love the child enough. I'm not saying that because I'm sure we'll go into it in your story in a moment. Someone can only recover when they actually want to. Or I guess a better way of saying it is someone can only recover when they're willing to.
And I think that's something that's critical.
Mm.
And parents, caregivers, loved ones, um, this is like the key takeaway. Recovery from anorexia is a family recovery.
Yes, it is.
It
Especially
is,
obviously if it's the child that has the anorexia, it affects
yes.
the whole entire family in so many ways.
And 100 years ago when I was getting treated, they only treated the identified patient.
Yeah. I think it's different nowadays. I mean,
Yes.
I still have judgment towards what I've heard about recovery centers from my clients, and they can't do it perfectly, right? There's not enough
Yeah.
resources. But what I still am hearing is that the genuine love and care and patience and concern and compassion in those treatment facilities, they see, I'm not saying all of them, absolutely not. And some treatment facilities I know of in the Netherlands where I live, they actually will only take on a patient, this is a positive, whose family are willing to be involved in the whole process with family therapy and all things, because and they said to me, because I visited, they asked me to visit for a day, just, you know, so they can refer to me and I can see how it works. I loved it because being in the coaching industry and the, you know, therapy industry that I'm in, if I see a child with their parent and I'm with them for an hour, I can see the dynamic. I can see exactly what's going on with body language, with the way they speak to each other. And this facility do the same, so they can learn so much about a family if they're all there together, with even to the point where someone sits, how their body language is, like you can, and because the family dynamic is what contributed to the eating disorders. No blame here.
Right.
It's true, right?
100%. I have so much anger still, and I'm 50. Okay. And I was in the hospital when I was 12. I still have all this unresolved anger that nobody did anything.
Yeah, yes. It was all on you because you had the illness and you need to recover all by yourself and you just need to eat more. It's not that hard, just eat, like I've heard it all before.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the pivotal moment for you then? So how long did it last for you until you actually started to really recover and get better?
So, in full transparency, I ate my way through the program.
Yes, a lot of people do that and then they get released and they go straight back to restriction.
I maintained, the minimal amount of weight that I had to maintain.
Yeah.
I think I gained 35 pounds when I was in the hospital. And I mean, I think I got discharged at like 75 pounds or something. And like, if I got below 72, they would send me back. So I was always like 73 and a half.
Mm.
But then I switched to more bulimia type of behavior, never vomiting, but diet pills and laxatives. And and that was my biggest fear because I remember in the hospital people telling me, "Oh, every restrictive anorexic becomes bulimic." And I was like, "Oh my God, dear God, please no." Um,
I did. Our
y-
stories are so similar, Robyn. This is
that's so
great.
interesting.
Yeah, I
So
did it
did
when I was 30.
oh, well, so I didn't vomit, but I became diet pills and laxatives, and I know from your story, obsessive exercise.
Yep. And the same as you, I couldn't vomit, thankfully. God knows I tried.
Me
So
too. Did it hurt your ear?
it hurt my throat because I was using my toothbrush and it just didn't work. So I'm glad it didn't work.
I know.
It was laxatives and it was diet pills and it was the illegal diet pills, like, you know, the things that they give to horses and stuff like it was the hot
Okay.
stuff. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you got better.
Me too, and you too, because we're here to tell our stories. And I believe, you know, of course, the whole point is you to share your story here and in your book. I believe that our stories have the keys to unlock someone's chains.
I think so too.
Yeah, by sharing raw and real without
Yeah,
sugarcoating it.
exactly. In the mental health world, we talk about suicide prevention all the time.
Yeah.
And but if you notice when you read an obituary of somebody who completed a suicide, it never says, you know, Sam Smith took his life. And I challenge people, what if we actually said how somebody died, that they took their life? Because if we keep not talking about it and it's a taboo subject,
Yep.
it's never going to not be taboo.
No, amen to that. We need to be talking about this, all of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yours turned into bulimia through with the exercise addiction, the diet pills, the laxatives. How long did that go on for?
a long time, but I get nervous about saying how long because I don't want people to like not have hope. Um, but I mean, I abused diet pills and laxatives um through my 20s and 30s. When I got pregnant, when I turned 40, obviously I stopped.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I do remember when my daughter was a newborn, we were in a pharmacy and I was looking at diet pills and laxatives. And then I thought to myself, Robyn, what are you doing? You've got
Mm.
your daughter in the stroller.
Yes.
Don't ever ingest something that you wouldn't want her to ingest. So
Mhm.
I've never done that again.
Wow.
Um,
Your daughter was such a gift in so many ways because of what you said
right?
before we press record, but also the fact that her being in present in your life, being alive, helped you to help yourself because that could have gone, you could have gone straight back to what you've done before for all those years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, being pregnant and knowing that this human was relying on me and that my miraculous body made this human and what a gift it was and what a temple I was.
Yeah.
I joke with people that getting pregnant is like a great cure for anorexia.
I've coached many clients who have had anorexia, and then, like you said, when they got pregnant, not all of them, but they stopped the majority of the self-harming behaviors. They at least ate enough to nourish their baby, not themselves. Because I think I'm right in saying that the baby does take everything first. So as long as you're giving the baby everything, then you're just left absolutely fucked and tired if you're not eating enough. But then after the baby's born, that's when the danger lies because you made a choice not to go back, but so many do. I assume motherhood, everything's new, stress, lack of sleep. It's again that coping mechanism, isn't it? And it's what you know. So your brain's like, hey, this is what we do when we're stressed and overwhelmed and out of control. We restrict and we feel better temporarily, and then we're in hell, and then we're stuck, and we're like, I need to get out of this place.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a cycle.
Yes. And the thing is, like when we feel overwhelmed and our coping mechanism is restriction, when we restrict, it actually feels better in the moment. It relieves that anxiety. It makes us feel more in control, which is why we do it. Obviously, I'm saying I'm not obviously doing that anymore, but I relate so much to it. But then we have to give up that short-term comfort for true healing and true freedom, not just temporary
Mhm.
comfort from using our coping mechanism.
What are some of your coping mechanisms?
Now I'm
Mhm.
healed. Honestly, reading as a distraction, like a novel, like I love a good novel. So it does relax me. And honestly, I've done so much work on myself. I'm not Jesus, I'm not Buddha, but I'm really good at just being like to myself, sweetheart, we're just going to feel, we're just going to breathe. It's okay, it will pass. Like we can just, do some kind of body stroking
Mhm.
or some journaling or just cry. And I'm really good at just feeling. And then if I'm not wanting to feel, if I'm not available for that, I'll just read or talk to my husband and say, this is how I feel. Can I just share something?
Mhm.
And that helps. I think just understanding that I will get through it because I've been through so much as we all have. We've got 100% success rate in survival. We're going to be fine, especially with love and compassion and gentleness and just being okay, being uncomfortable and actually being okay to sit in the suck. And it will pass because it always does. So I guess
Mhm.
the one word answer is self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah. What about you? What helps you? So now obviously your coping mechanism isn't restriction. What things help you when
Um,
you need to cope?
Well, I don't exercise compulsively, but I do exercise most days. but just to get my heart rate up.
Get the endorphins flowing.
Exactly. But there's a couple of things I do. If I am thinking about, doing something that I shouldn't do, I will ask myself, Robyn, how are you going to feel in a minute? How are you going to feel in an hour?
Mm.
How will you feel in a day, a week, a month, a year? And it could be, calling somebody from my past that like I probably shouldn't call.
Mm.
So I just do these like little cognitive check-ins. I do a lot of breath work and I do, okay, name 5 things that you can see right now, 5 things
Yeah.
you can hear.
Be present.
Yeah, just be where my feet are.
Yes. Oh, I love that saying.
Be where my feet are.
Yes. Just to ground and be present. I mean, if I was listening to something like this before recovery, well, number one, I wouldn't be able to absorb what was being said right now
Of
because
course.
I've received it. But if I could, I probably would have eye rolled and been like, ugh, being present, ugh, reading a book. And so if anyone is in that right now, I just want to speak to that because I get it. But as you go into recovery, you see how freaking important these things are because so many of us, especially with eating disorders, are so disconnected from self. We just disassociate. That's easy because we have to feel in our physical body. Let's just live in our heads because it's safer. And it's easy to just distract, disassociate, stay busy. So the opposite to that is stillness, connection to self, breathing, which sounded so boring to me, but it was boring because I was resistant to doing that because it was painful to be with me, and just my feelings. I was petrified and I would never admit that because I was, a strong woman who achieved everything she went for and who was busy and productive and a perfectionist. Yeah, because I was just running away from shame. That's all I was doing.
Mhm.
And I think you the
Shame.
same.
It's the worst.
Yes. Especially with what you said about your mother.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was ever good enough.
Mm-mm.
And so perfectionism is a way to try to be good enough. But of course, perfectionism doesn't even exist.
It doesn't exist. Um, and in my experience, the expectation and the bar kept changing.
Oh, yeah. Kept going higher and higher, and it was never enough. Yeah. What changed for you? When did you truly, so you said in your 20s and 30s, you were, abusing laxatives and diet pills. Then you got pregnant at 40 and then you stopped. When you had your little girl in the pharmacy, you went to do that behavior and you were like, no. Did it get better from that point? Did you get help? Like what happened then?
Yes, I was in therapy.
Mm.
Um, and I probably I I think in my 40s, my go-to was over exercise. I remember I went to a post-delivery appointment with, when my daughter was just a couple of weeks old and got weighed and, stood on the scale backwards and
They
said, I don't
still
want
they
to,
still do all that stuff over there, do they?
yep.
That's crazy.
Said, I don't want to know what I weigh.
Yeah.
And the nurse, because this is the culture we live in, said, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. You weigh less than you did before you got pregnant.
Was she
And
saying it like it was a positive or right? Yeah.
so you know what I did, Victoria? Because I like always have to tell people what's right. I waited a couple weeks and then I wrote a letter to
Good
the
for you.
office.
Good for
And
you.
used it as a teachable moment. Like,
Yes.
do not comment about weight loss.
No, no, no. It's everywhere. Our society, the culture is drowning in it.
It's
And we're
disgusting.
the ones that are throwing out logs to people and being like, here, take this log, take this log. There's a shore over there. We don't need to be in this shit anymore. But unless it's people like
Yeah.
you who are writing letters, for example, to educate people, that woman has a choice. She can either take it on board and actually think, yeah, reflecting on that, I didn't know what was going on with her. So in the future, I won't say that. That could help so many
So
people.
many people. Yeah. I think overall, what has helped me to heal and be the best version of myself as, you know, a mother and a wife and a human is individuating from my mom,
Ah,
which I know probably sounds familiar.
yes,
Um,
absolutely.
my family and I moved. We used to live about 45 minutes from her. And even though I never really liked her, I still called her every day. I felt like that was my obligation.
Yeah.
And, nobody ever liked being around her. There was always tension. And um, just before COVID, my family and I decided to move 5 hours away. And cutting that metaphorical umbilical cord
Yes. I'm relating
resonates,
so much right now. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I don't want to keep making this about me, but I relate so much to your story, Robyn. I love my mum to pieces. I still do, of course. It's just more healthy love, the way I see her now. But my soul knew, because I told you my story before we press record. 7 years ago, I went to Egypt on holiday, randomly met a Dutch guy, moved to the Netherlands within the space of knowing him for 3 months. And I was still in the eating disorder when I met him. But my soul, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, knew that in order to recover, I had to be physically away from my mother and her patterns and the family dynamic. And I was the caretaker and the scapegoat and the hero all at the same time. I was a mother to my mother my entire life. I didn't know any of this until I started recovery. So without knowing, I just followed my feeling and lived with my now husband. And that distance physically gave me the space emotionally to actually be like, I don't like who I am. I don't know who I am. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to carry on this way. And I'm having a breakdown on what's the point in even being alive. But from that place, I've flourished and I needed that physical space. So I resonate so much, Robyn. So
Yeah.
that helped you just 5 hours away. And then did you also have therapy around how your mother was when you were a child? Did you work on the
Oh,
stuff?
ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Um, um, but in my situation, my entire life, I've begged my mom to get therapy. I think that she stopped developing emotionally when she was about 4 years old.
Mhm.
And the minute she doesn't get her way, even now, she throws a temper tantrum and cries. Yours too?
Think you I think we're like this twins or something.
That is hilarious.
Oh, it's either the silent treatment or the tears and the tantrum.
Yep.
And she's 67 years old and she's working on herself. I do want to say that she's doing her best, but passive aggressive. I even got a passive aggressive comment this morning. I'm just like, I'm just gonna ignore that.
Well, Victoria, imagine writing a book.
Oh, I assume she's read it. Tell me
She,
about that.
she, I sent my mom and my brother a video of me unboxing my book for the
I
first
saw on
time.
your Instagram.
Oh, yay, thank you.
That's
And my mother texted me and said, "Can I get a copy of it so I can be prepared?" And I
okay.
said, "Sure." And I sent her a PDF of the book. And then my family and I left for Costa Rica for 10 days. And the whole time
Good
I was
timing. Good timing.
right, I know, it was like perfect. And I felt excited and alive, but also like a little uncertain because I didn't know if she read it or not.
Hmm.
Oh my God, I'm gonna die if you can relate to this. So when we were in Costa Rica, I called her one time, just to check in and say hi. It had been a couple of days. And she answered and she's like, "Hi, Rob, what's up?" So I got telephone voice because she was with her friends.
Yep. Putting on the mask. Everything's fine.
Yep. And then a few days later, when I got home, it was back to the hello.
Like nothing's wrong, but obviously something's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then eventually, she told me how embarrassed she was by my book. And I was raised that what happens in my house should stay in my house. And how could she ever go to her monthly lunch again with everybody's going to read my book? And I made her out to be the worst mother in the world.
So
And
all about her.
she
That's
had no idea how much I hated her. And I listened and I said, what's so interesting to me, Mom, is that you're making this all about you.
yep.
And you haven't even paused and said, "Oh my God, Robyn, I had no idea how much you were suffering. And I'm so sorry that I was misattuned."
Yeah. I have cold shivers, like, because I would want that for you so much, but I can relate. It's insane how much our stories are aligned. It's incredible.
And your mom's an Aquarius. Well,
And
I'm an
she's,
Aquarius.
yeah, you're an Aquarius. I'm an Aries, so I'm a fire sign. But I mean, obviously, when we talk about our mothers in this way, you said your mum stopped developing emotionally at 4 because I assume she had a very traumatic childhood too. So I'm not saying it's their fault,
Her
but
fault.
that was your experience. And there's a thing called taking responsibility
Yes.
with how she was as a mother. And I like to think I take responsibility as how I am as a person. It doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean we wouldn't do things differently if we could go back. But the fact that she made it all about her, again, literally like you're speaking about my mum, because they don't have that awareness. And my therapist said to me when I was breaking the codependency, I felt so guilty and so bad. And she reminded me, she said, Victoria,
Mhm.
you're 37. Well, I'm 37 now. This would have been 35. You're 35. You've paid a lot of money to work with me because I paid this coach £4,000 a day to be with her for like half a day because she was the best. You're working on your shit. You're feeling your pain, you're reflecting, you're doing the work. Your mum is a grown-ass woman. She also has the opportunity to do exactly what you're doing. And then after I then defended her again, because that's what my pattern was, and I reflected on that, I was like, that's so true. Yes, she has a different, she's my mum, so it's not that generations ahead, but times were different, but they're not now. And she has money to spend on all these things. Why not spend it on yourself? So that helped me to be like, no, you're right. I'm doing the work. I'm offering it to her. I'm showing her the way. And she's still choosing to get new windows in the conservatory that she doesn't need instead of getting a coach or a therapist. So, yes.
Yep. I get it. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
So you
only
said
thing
you
I've
had,
ever asked is for her to go to therapy. Even this summer, I said, let's have family therapy together. We could
yeah.
resume. I'm 78 years old. I'm never going to change. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. That's hard, right? So you did all this therapy yourself, which I assume helped. It helped a lot. Did it
Yeah, of
help a lot?
course. Yeah, I think obviously therapy is very helpful. I think at a point, reliving the past um, doesn't serve a purpose any longer. And, being where your feet are and being
Yes.
embodied is a better approach than, all this like analysis.
Yes. No, I
Um,
agree. It's both and I think. I think it's
I
important
agree.
to understand and connect the dots and then move on because you need to take responsibility for whatever horrific things happened for you. Not blame, responsibility because it is what it is and it's shit and it is what it is still, with so much compassion and then move forward. So, do you have 10 extra, I want to be mindful of your time, but do you have like 10 extra minutes, Robyn?
I do.
Okay, great. What helped you tangibly eat more and stop exercising as much? Like, what helped you with the actual behaviors that then incorporated recovery mentally and physically as you were doing the emotional work?
Such a great question. And um, there is a program. It's called the Human Performance Institute.
Mhm.
And it was, I forget what year it was started, but it was started to train professional tennis players. And then they started training all of these professional athletes. And it was mind, body, spirit. And they have a program called Energy for Performance in Life. And I went through Energy for Performance in Life in 2013. And the light bulb moment for me was when they were talking about eating. And they talked about, the colors of the rainbow and portions, which is very helpful. But what really was the monumental shift for me was the idea of eating so that I can be the best version of Robyn
Ah,
and the best wife
mm,
and the best friend and the best community member. Eating so I could be the best me, not eating so I could look a certain way.
yeah,
It
yes,
was just mind changing for me.
yeah. You know,
Um,
again, a resonance to our story, of course. The thing that shifted for me was when my now husband Wouter, but he wasn't my husband at the time, when I'd moved to the Netherlands, full-blown eating disorder still. And then he could see my eating patterns, right? We lived together. He worked from home because he's a coach too. I wasn't a coach at that point. And he would say to me, and this is the first time anyone had ever asked me this question. He said to me, don't you want to like nourish yourself and take care of your
mm,
body? And I was like, I don't know, because all I've ever had is as a child, you eat too much, you're greedy, you eat too much, you're greedy.
oh,
Anorexia,
Victoria,
you
no.
need to eat
Oh,
more. You need to eat more. You're not eating enough. You need to eat more. And then even when I recovered, in quotes, from anorexia, which meant I was weight restored, but still fucked up completely in my head and in bulimia, it
right.
was then back to, don't eat too much. And it was like, what the fuck? Like, what do you want me to do? And so for him to ask me that simple question, like with confusion, as if like, don't you want to like nourish yourself? And then that's the first thing when it opened up to me, similar to what you're saying, to actually see food as something other than controlling the way my body looked. And I was just like mind blown.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has that moment.
Mm.
Um, God, that could be a really good blog post or podcast. Like, what was your moment
True that. Yeah.
when
Because
you
that really
shifted?
opened it up for me. Because I'd never thought about it ever.
The
It wasn't,
mindset moment.
yeah. Even in terms of like health, so I would eat the lowest calorie thing. So even if it was like literally chemical, if it had no calories, I was all for it. Whereas now and in recovery, because I started to actually care about myself, I would much rather have real food and real sugar
Me too.
than something that's chemical that I have no fucking clue what my body's going to do with it. That's no calorie.
I agree.
And I think this is all linked to self-worth, self-love,
Yeah.
like you said.
I get car sick. And when I get car sick, this is so funny. What helps me is to drink a Coca-Cola and eat potato chips.
There you go.
And
And carbs.
yeah. And I remember somebody had gone into a convenience store and they brought me a Diet Coke. And I was like, oh no, 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 no. I'd
No.
rather have the sugar and the calories than the
Yes.
chemicals.
Same. And I think that's naturally, I've noticed for myself and my clients too, I think it's a natural progression of genuine self-care and self-love. Not that we're demonizing foods. Like, trust me, I eat foods that have chemicals and E
So
numbers
do
in
I.
them. But generally, how I feed myself and nourish myself every day, I care about nourishment and pleasure. And I have all the foods that have chemicals in when I want to and when I feel like it, but it's just naturally, authentically not every day anymore. Whereas in
Right.
recovery, when I allowed like the extreme hunger to happen, that was all I was eating was sugar and fats and chemicals and processed food because that's all my body wanted. And I guess it's just leaning into that trust.
Oh my goodness, leaning in.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, if I want like a bacon, egg, and cheese, I'm gonna eat a bacon, egg, and cheese.
Yeah. Same.
It's freedom.
It's freedom to say yes and to say no when you recovered. It's both. I always say it's both and. Like I used to think that food freedom meant not caring about your health. That's not it at all.
Mm.
Your body wants to be healthy. So if you get out of its bloody way, get out of your own way
Yeah.
and practice connecting and being present and tuning in and not disassociating, your body will guide you. And yes, at the beginning, that might look like a shitload of processed food and sugar. And if you keep allowing it, it passes and you naturally just arrive at like a balanced diet without even trying.
Yes, it just happens organically when you just are where your feet are and you lean in, your body will tell you exactly what you need.
Yes. And with your book, when you talk about, do you talk about how you recovered in your book and like your whole entire story of, well,
Mhm.
from start to finish, I guess? Can you share up to 3 tangible action steps for someone who perhaps might be really resonating with this conversation, even down to their mothers? Like, I'm not joking. Like, I guarantee so many people will
Yeah.
be like, oh my God, me too, with in terms of the mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah.
So with anything to do with recovery, what's 3 things you would say to someone who is currently where you used to be?
Whew. I would say it's got to be the family getting the treatment because the anorexia, the bulimia, the whatever is a symptom. You
Yes.
know, it- a cough is a cough, but it's, the symptom of a virus or a bacterial infection.
Right.
The eating disorder is a symptom of the family is fucked up and needs help.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
so, parents that are listening, if you love your kid and you really want to help them and you want to be in service to them, the best thing that you can do is be in therapy with them so
Yeah.
that you can examine your own behavior, the
Yes.
family behavior, and heal together because it's not just his or her work to do alone.
No, I completely agree with that.
I also think that reading a lot, by different influential people is very helpful. I love the work of Glennon Doyle.
Oh, me too. Untamed is, I've recommended a client actually yesterday, start reading that to let go of the people pleasing and be herself.
Yeah, and her podcast, We Can Do Hard Things.
Mhm.
I mean, I have a notebook. So I listen to We Can Do Hard Things or whatever podcast, and I listen, and then I look up the transcript, and then I write down what resonates.
Yes.
So find that thought leader, find that recovery mentor,
Mm.
um, that you can learn from and with,
Yeah.
and love yourself, love yourself, love yourself. If you don't love yourself, nobody can or will.
No, because you can't receive the love of others anyway
Mm-mm.
if you don't love self.
Yes, be
Yeah.
kind. I mean, we treated ourselves worse than we would have treated our own worst enemy.
If we treated an animal the way we treated ourselves, we'd be locked up for animal abuse,
Yes,
basically. Same if we treated a child the way we treated ourselves, we'd be done for child abuse.
yes, we would.
Yeah. So when we look at it like that, I know there's such thing as unicorn syndrome, where we understand that everyone else it makes sense for, even younger me, it makes sense for, but me today, I'm the unicorn and it doesn't actually relate to me. It does. You're not a unicorn.
Yeah.
You're a
And
human.
I would say to that person, well, it might not relate to you yet, but
Yes. Yeah. Otherwise we just stay stuck where we are and then nothing changes. And then
yeah.
like imagine if, because you're, how old did you say? 50? How old are
Mhm.
you?
50.
50. Imagine if you didn't recover and you were 50 and then you were 60 and then you were 70
Oh,
and you were still in the same shit, taking laxatives, abusing diet. Like, what fucking life is that?
it's terrible.
Yeah. And we think,
Terrible.
I used to think when I was younger, you know, when you're like 20, you think like 30 is really old.
Yeah.
And then etc. So I used to think like when I was in my 20s, like, oh, when I'm like 40, I won't care what I look like anyway, so I'll just be fine anyway. That is not true. Unless you do the work, you will always care. And I say care in a negative sense of like if your value is appearance, in order to try and be enough and feel loved and be accepted,
Right.
feel safe, there's reasons why we value the things. Nothing's going to change. Not age isn't going to magically change something.
No, and then when you get older, there's different things that you worry about with your age.
Mm,
And, now I'm getting all the messages about anti-aging and all this crap. And it's like,
yeah,
fuck you. Let me just be. That's another
exactly.
thing. I highly unfollow people that are posting shit that is not going to be uplifting and support you in your recovery.
Yes, agree. There's another cellulite cream, another wrinkle cream, and honestly, if everyone woke up tomorrow loving themselves, the beauty industry and the diet industry would crumble overnight,
Mm-hmm.
right? So who is profiting off this insecurity of mine? And then one of my mantras was, because I can get quite fiery and angry when I realize what had happened, I am no longer willing to contribute to my own fucking oppression. I'm done with that shit. So every time I would go into a disordered behavior, I'd be like, fuck that. Like, I'm no longer willing to contribute to my own oppression and the oppression of all the other women out there. No.
Yeah. I have a note on my desk. How do I want to feel? Oh, you can't see it because
Oh,
it's
I could when
blurry.
I can now. How do I want to feel? I love that because you get to decide.
Yep, I keep it here all day.
Oh, I could talk to you for hours,
This
Robyn.
was fun.
So much fun. Tell
Yeah.
me about your book. So tell me how when people, because I work with women all around the world, so they'll be listening in Australia,
Oh, okay.
England, Spain. How can
So
people
my
get your book?
book is called Bones, Anorexia, Anxiety, and My Path to Self-Love. And there is a trigger warning because I do talk about um, behaviors and weight. Um,
Which is the point of your story, right? If you
thank
ask
you. Thank
me,
you.
just
Um,
saying.
and, I- with humor, I paint a memoir of self-hatred, self-loss,
Mm,
self-love, anger, determination, and acceptance that is relatable to anybody who has suffered the ramifications of our food and body obsessed culture.
wow.
And I've been through it all, and it sucked, and it was ugly, but I have a beautiful life.
Mm,
And I really think that if I can be in recovery, anybody can.
yeah,
Um, and I think what differentiates my book from other eating disorder memoirs is that there's no filter. It
that's the
is
best
raw.
way. I mean, if you were drawn to my podcast, you know I have zero.
Exactly. Yes. There actually was another ED podcast that invited me on, and after researching them, I declined because our moral compasses are not aligned.
Right. And they would have probably edited the shit out of you or something or whatever.
Totally.
Yeah.
Um, so I think my book could be really helpful for anybody that's loving somebody with an eating disorder, just wants to learn what is it really like to be in the brain of an eating
Mhm.
disorder.
Yeah.
Um, in my resources section, I've got a whole bunch of crisis support contacts, family, patient, and support people to reach out to, books that have helped me, well-being resources,
Nice.
and a book discussion guide. And something that I'm offering to people is, hey, if you read my book and you want to have a virtual book club, email me. We'll have a virtual book
Yes.
club. I would love it.
I love that. I'm going to, so obviously this will be released in a couple of weeks, and I'll really push it in my group coaching and then actually encourage us to have a book club, which obviously you would be invited to, so you can participate too in your own book. I think I might let you do that.
Yeah, I would love to. I think, I learn. What I like to say is it's such a privilege to give my pain a purpose.
Yes. And help so many people. There's a reason, I mean, a bigger spiritual belief of mine, there's a reason for everything, even the pain that we can't see past. And that just literally came to me just right then in those words.
And that was really beautiful. I got the chills.
Yeah. But when we heal and then look at the bigger picture, even if we don't understand, we can use our pain as our purpose and our passion to heal others. And I believe, this is just my belief, that that's why we went through it in the first place. So we have the tools and the knowledge and the wisdom to actually help others also get out of where we were, because it's all about being of service and growing and love and connection to self and others.
Yeah. One last thing that just came to my mind about, how to heal. We all know that the anorexic brain shrinks.
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, nourish yourself. If you don't nourish yourself, you literally will not have anything to make your brain better.
No, it's like the chicken and the egg, isn't it? It's like your brain doesn't work properly because there's no grey matter hardly, and it's shrunken so much. It's even smaller than patients that have been brain scanned with psychiatric but like all these like extreme mental conditions. It's the smallest one out of all these conditions. So you need to eat more in order for your brain to work better, in order for you then to do the emotional and mental
Exactly.
work. But then the hardest part is to eat more when your brain's like, but if you have the right support and you have that will within you to be like, enough is enough, I want different for myself, you have the power to do that. Everyone does.
Exactly.
And then it gets easier as time goes on. Yeah.
Mm.
Robyn, thank you so much. I've loved talking to you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for your story and for your knowledge. I really appreciate it.
It was great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And listeners, I will see you next week. Much love.